from myself. This session brings you about the practical aspects of the UK's tax regime. This session is going to cover at large about how to file the tax returns, especially the self-assessment tax regime. We will talk about the tax residency and resident status. Then it would broaden up towards filing obligations and statutory compliance. So rather than taking so much time, I will just introduce Mr. Asim Malik, who's the fellow chartered accountant based in the UK. He's got very vast, over 2 decades of experience advising clients on the tax, audit, various statutory compliances. And his experience spans around a number of practices he's running across the UK, having a blessed relationship as a friend. So we requested if he can spare his busy time for our members, especially those consultants who are already into the UK tax regime or UK tax system, as well as our aspiring students who are going to be chartered management accountants in the next few months or next few years who want to come into the practice. So, Mr. Malik, we also have Mr. Ghulam Mustafa Qazi, who is the chairman of the TSPD committee. He's gracing the event as guest of honor. I would now request Mr. Malik to please start this webinar officially and enlighten us about the UK tax system. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Kaisa. Thank you very much. Let me just share some slides with you.
जी मलिक साहब जिस वक्त तक ये स्लाइड शेयर होती हैं I would appreciate कि if it can go in both languages, bits of English, bits of Urdu, so that all can they can participate really well, they can understand the system really well. So
Yes.
sort of hybrid would really work quite well.
Yes, sure. So basically, let me just share slides with you. So I'm going to talk about in 2 sessions. One is about the tax system as a whole. And then I've been requested to actually show some practical information about how to file the tax return, how to complete the tax return. तो मैंने उसको जो है ना from HMRC portal, there are 2 ways to file tax return. Either you use a commercially available software, जिस तरह Sage है, TaxCal है, some other softwares हैं, or you can actually use HMRC's own portal to file the tax return. So I've basically populated an example for you guys to do a tax return on HMRC portal. But let me just start with actually some background information about how the tax system work and what sort of issues you'll be looking for. So starting with how the UK tax system overall work. Like all developed economies, there's an autonomous body which is called HMRC, which basically collects and governs the tax system. It is working under Treasury, equivalent to FPR in Pakistan. और इसका main objective है to actually maintain direct and indirect taxation. So basically, I assume that members are aware what's the difference between direct and indirect taxation. Broadly speaking, direct taxation is imposed on the individual, which is the end user. So for example, payroll taxes, self-employment taxes, they are all sort of direct taxes. And VAT is a classic example of indirect taxes, where tax is collected by somebody who is not actually consuming the product, but is payable by the end user. So broadly speaking, there are 2 sort of main tax systems. Now, direct taxation covers income tax, capital gain tax, corporation tax, which is applied on the corporate bodies. and national insurance, which technically speaking is not a tax, but is broadly, or for practical purposes, classified as a tax. And in terms of indirect taxation, like I said, most common example is VAT, and the other one is stamp duty tax, which is payable on certain type of transactions. Like all major developed economies, the whole tax system is basically working on the self-assessment basis, which is basically the individual or their agent or their accountant, for example, have to calculate the taxation, keeping in mind different kind of allowances, reliefs available, and then basically report that to the taxman and pay their taxes on time. Over the years, HMRC has basically developed certain different mechanisms to make their information and tax collection efficient. The recent example is making tax digital. It's the similar one which is applied to VAT about 10 years ago, or real-time information, which started about 20 years ago, where you are reporting that information in a digital format. And not only reporting, basically, you're keeping the record in a digital format. Without going into basic details, if the transaction or if the information is changed, then there's the audit trail available to HMRC, and they can ask question about the change. Now, basically, like I mentioned, the whole system actually works on self-assessment. And the way self-assessment system work is that it's the taxpayer who's responsible for reporting the income or gain, um, and he or she will be able to calculate their own taxes and pay those taxes. Now, HMRC have got certain tools available to them to make sure that the information is accurate. So a typical example is basically certain bodies are actually sharing information with the taxman, with HMRC, typically banks, foreign entities. So for example, certain banks, certain foreign banks, certain foreign governments are sharing information with HMRC, and basically they compare that information against the information they have received under the self-assessment system. And if there's any discrepancy, which it may trigger a discovery assessment or it may trigger a full investigation. Now and then HMRC actually do compliance checks as well. So there are different mechanism of how to select the taxpayer for compliance. So for example, they do certain campaigns on different trades. So like, for example, a couple of years ago, they did a campaign on tuition providers or tutors. In one occasion, they did a campaign on doctors. Doctors were privately providing services, so they did basically compliance check on that. And they basically, like I mentioned, collect information from different other entities, and those information obviously, if they're not collaborating with the tax information provided in the self-assessment, it may trigger a compliance check. After the compliance check, normally the inspector decide based on the behavior of the individual, based on errors, assuming there are some errors, about the unpaid tax, not only unpaid tax, but also about the penalties and interest. Penalties ranges from 0%, which is called suspended penalty, basically, to 100% of the tax liability. Normally, most inspector cap it between 10 to 20%, as long as the taxpayer is basically cooperating with the inspector. Now, one of the main aspects, especially if for a high net worth individual who are moving to different countries, or individuals, for example, who are coming to UK to work, is the tax residency status. For last 20 to 25 years, tax residency has been evolved. Previously, a taxpayer is only liable to pay taxes on UK income unless they are tax resident. So there's difference between tax resident and resident for the purpose of immigration. So we are not discussing immigration, we're just basically discussing tax residency. General rule is 180 plus days. If you are in UK, then you became a tax resident. But these number of days actually decrease with certain events. Recently, about 10 years ago, government introduced something called statutory residency test, which is basically to check if the person is tax resident in UK or not. Now, that comes with automatic overseas or automatic UK. So, for example, a person who is leaving UK permanently to work in another country on full-time basis will most likely be non-resident in UK, which means that he or she will only be liable for income arising in UK. However, there are occasions when a person is tax resident in UK just because he or she spent just few days in UK. And if that thing happens, basically, they are liable to pay taxes on their worldwide income in UK. The rules are very complicated, so I would suggest basically have a detailed knowledge before you advise anybody. But that's basically the basic sense of the residency status. In certain cases, you can actually apply split year treatment. So, for example, if the person is leaving the country permanently, so you basically can actually request HMRC to break down that tax year into 2 years, into two portions. One is where the person is UK resident, and one is basically when the person is non-resident, and then only be liable for taxation on UK rising income, not on worldwide income. But like I said, these rules are very complicated, so you need to have detailed knowledge before you actually advise anybody. Now, that brings to the basic information about self-assessment. Now, as I mentioned, self-assessment basically is where a taxpayer or their accountant, call them agent basically, is actually declaring their income, calculating their taxes, and paying off their liabilities. Now, if a person becomes self-employed or for any other reasons, there are multiple reasons why a person needs to file a tax return, he or she needs to actually inform HMRC in advance that they need to file a tax return. Now, that will trigger allocation of a UTR number, which is unique to every individual. I think Pakistan mein it's connected to your national ID card. So here there are two sort of taxation system. One is called your NI number. So everybody who turned 16 will get their national insurance number. Or a person, if he or she is coming to UK to work will get their NI number. Um, but that doesn't mean they are required to do a self-assessment tax return. So for tax return, there's something called unique tax reference number, which is UTR. So once you inform HMRC for a reason to file a tax return, then they will basically create a record for you and issue you a UTR number. Now, UTR number basically, like I said, is unique to every individual. There are occasions where they can change UTR number, but normally it just stays with you for the rest of your life. Doesn't matter whether you're going to file tax return in future or not. Once an UTR is allocated, that's basically HMRC saying that a record has been created for you. Now, when do we apply for UTR number if you have never got it? Um, as soon as possible, but the registration deadline is 5th of October. So if you are liable to pay tax, for example, in the year 25-26, then you have got until 5th of October to apply for UTR number. My suggestion would be apply as soon as possible because there are delays in HMRC system. So in certain cases, they are taking months to actually issue a UTR number. Problem is that if you don't have the UTR number, you can't file a tax return. And if you can't file a tax return in time, you will be subject to penalties. So as soon as possible. And at the practical point is that if a taxpayer has got their own HMRC portal, always try to apply from there because it's much quicker compared to sending them a paper form, which can take something around 6 to 8 weeks to even process. And if there's any issue, then they'll start sending you letters, which basically further delays the whole system. Um, right. Now, in terms of filing obligations, as I mentioned, the obligation starts when you actually start receiving income for, which is basically untaxed income. So if you, for example, have got a salary income, there's no filing obligation because you're taxed on the income at source. So your employer is basically taking the tax from your pay packet and handing it over to HMRC. But for any other reason, so like I said, if you are receiving rental income, if you're self-employed, if you are receiving certain type of benefits, in fact, then you are liable for. So in that case, do apply for a UTR number by 5th October. In past, HMRC sort of ignored that 5th of October deadline. As long as you're filing the tax return on or before the due date, normally they don't um, apply any kind of penalties, even if you're applying after 5th October. Having said, the law actually allows them to charge penalty, which is a minimum of £100. And if you are not filing, submitting the tax return or paying taxes, then it becomes a tax gate penalty as well. But broadly speaking, 5th October is the registration deadline. 31st of October, if you are submitting the tax return on paper. So there are different deadlines if you are submitting on paper or if you're submitting online. Again, practical point, basically, always try to do it online. A is much easier for you. There's no risk of any delay or any sort of other issues. This even commercially available softwares or HMRC owned software, it basically assists you in terms of checking the tax returns, in terms of calculating the tax returns. So I do recommend basically file online, but the statute deadline for submitting the tax return on paper is 31st of October. 31st of January is basically online, and that's when the tax is due. So in terms of tax liability, you basically pay this year's tax. Plus, in certain cases, depending on your tax liability, depending on your circumstances, you may be liable to pay tax for the following year in two installments. So one is within the year. So we are in the tax year 26, 27. Um, and if you're filing a tax return for 25, 26, the tax liability basically arises on 31st of Jan. Not only that, you will be, in certain cases, will be liable for installment taxation for the current tax year, which is 26, 27. One installment in January and the other one is in July. Um, Again, basically, you need to look at the circumstances of whether or not a person is liable for payment on account or payment installment for the current tax year. Now, that brings us to type of incomes. Broadly speaking, taxation is imposed on direct income, employment income, self-employment income, partnership income. Partnership is a bit complicated in a way that it's the partnership which calculates the share of income and allocation among the partners, but partnership is not paying tax. So the difference between partnership and limited company is that a limited company will be liable for its own taxation, while a partnership is not liable for its own taxation. Partnership basically transfers the income to the individual partners, and it's the partner who will be liable for their own taxation based on their own circumstances. So it could be that one partner is paying taxes on 20% basis and the other partner is paying at 45% because it goes to their own circumstances. Again, their loss allocation is based on their individual circumstances rather than the partnership. Right. Rental income is another example, which is quite common. Now, what you need to be aware of is that employment income, self-employment income is taxed on accruing basis, while rental income is taxed on cash basis. So is the investment income. So typically all earned income is taxed on cash basis. So dividends, rental income, investment income, capital gain. So there's a crystallizing event in terms of capital gain. So you're basically selling something or converting one product into another product. So that basically is a crystallizing event and it triggers the tax liability. I thought I'd probably just tell you about that one. In terms of what can be put down to a partnership accounts or a self-employment. There's a statutory test called wholly and exclusively. So an expense can be claimed if that payment or that expense is wholly and exclusively for the business. So, for example, a person is driving a van for the work. So that is basically wholly and exclusively for the business. But if a person is taking so driving a van, coming back home, and then stop over for their own sort of personal reasons. So then you need to look at whether the whole trip is wholly exclusively or you need to do a split. You need to basically make sure that an expense is for employment or business, if there's a situation where there's a hybrid regime applicable. For employment, you not only basically look for wholly and exclusively, but necessary condition as well. So an expense have to be incurred, which is necessary for the employment. Um, for example, again, a person is traveling, paying of traveling cost. Is it necessary for the business, or are there any other alternates? Um, that is something HMRC look into it. And then there are some also reliefs available to the taxman. So for example, if a person is contributing toward pension, there's a limit of how much you can contribute, which again you need to look into. But if the person is contributing towards pension, or if the person is basically paying for to charity, then your basic rent band basically will increase by 25%. And then you basically get less taxed. It only applies to individuals who are on higher rate of taxation or on the additional rate. But this is something you can look into it. Um, and then it mainly applies to rental income, where a person is basically incurring cost which may be of capital nature. So basically, you need to separate out the capital expenditure. Capital expenditure will be set off against the capital gain taxes. Um, or if there's a business asset, then basically it will be set off against that one as well. Now, NI, national insurance. Basically, national insurance is, broadly speaking, a tax, but and the origin of that one is not a tax. It's basically imposed. Um, it started after sort of World War to contribute towards the pension cost and mainly to fund national health system. But nowadays, it's basically part of the whole taxation system. There's a debate going on that at some point, both these taxes will be merged and then create a one taxation, but who knows whether it's going to happen or not. But at the moment, national insurance is calculated slightly differently compared to the income tax. Um, Basically, there are four classes of national insurance. Class 1 or 1A, which is paid by the employee on their earning. One is basically paid by the employer. Employer pay 15% on certain type of incomes, while employee pay 9%. Self-employed individual, they only pay class 4 national insurance. There used to be class 2 national insurance, which is a fixed amount irrespective of the profit. But since beginning of last tax year, HMRC have abolished it. It used to be 250 a week, but now it doesn't apply anymore. And it's only the class 4 national insurance, which is paid by the self-employed. Worth noting here, national insurance is only applicable on the earned income. So for example, salary income, self-employment income, partnership income. At the moment, it doesn't apply on capital gain taxes. It doesn't apply on investment income. It doesn't apply on a rental income. Although again, there is an active debate at the moment that there may be some sort of national insurance element on the rental income, but it's not there yet. Few years ago, as an alternate to national insurance, they introduced something called dividend tax, so which broadly covers the national insurance element. So if you structure a business in a way that the shareholders are taking some salary and rest in dividends. Um, that was giving sort of unfair, as per the government, advantage um, to the individual shareholder because they can take dividends on something which is their employment income. So they basically introduce something called dividend taxation, which has got its own rates, by the way. So they're not taxed on 20, 40, or 45%, is 8.75 and 33% and 39%. But basically it's broadly covering the national insurance element, which would otherwise be payable if the person is taking salary instead of dividends. Now, things which actually affect us as a tax advisor, as an accountant, is the compliance, i.e. tax return filing. Now, um, tax return filing starts with gathering the information. So you need to, as a tax advisor, you need to make sure that the taxpayer is giving you accurate information, because if there's a compliance check and if HMRC found out that the information is not correct, then to some extent they do maintain some sort of database of their own tax advisors. So it to some extent affect you as well in terms of affecting your other clients. So you need to basically make sure that the information client is feeding you is accurate and reasonable as well. You need to basically make sure that the classifications is correct as well in terms of what client can claim, is claimed. You need to be robust in terms of telling client that certain type of expenditures is not available to them, because that is something HMRC will look into it. Um, in terms of gathering information, again, a suggestion, just make sure that you have got access to client's bank account, because there are a number of occasions when HMRC start the investigation, they basically start with bank statements. And it just happens that you omitted some sort of dividends or pension income or some sort of other income. So again, a reasonable expectation is that you at least look at the credits on the bank account and make sure that there's an explanation for every material transaction. I mean, if it's a couple of pound here or there, I wouldn't lose my sleep on it, but all the major credits, I would suggest basically should have explanation on it. Figures need to be reconciled as much as possible before submitting. And in terms of submission, obviously, you got, as I mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, you got two options. Basically, use a commercially available software to submit the information to HMRC, which in certain cases, I'll come on to that one in a minute, but in certain cases, it's mandatory. It's called MTT regime. So certain type of information have to be submitted through a commercially available software. And if the if the person is not subject to that, then obviously you need to basically make sure that information is compiled and submitted to the taxman. Right. So that brings on to making text digital. Making text digital is basically a platform where HMRC is asking information submitted in a particular format with some sort of audit trail. So it's the softwares which basically are maintaining those audit trails. So typically, if a transaction is reclassified, the software actually keep a record of what was the original one and how it's been reclassified. If the figure has been changed, then in terms of HMRC, when they start the investigation, basically they can look at the audit trail and basically start asking you questions about any changes. Now, just bear in mind, record keeping is not in terms of basically keeping the invoices or bills or receipts or bank statements. You can still keep it in paper format. You can still keep the um, information in digital format. It's the transactions which are recorded. So, if you got experience of using Excel, for example, um, you can change figures in Excel, and there's no trail. But in terms of this making text digital, there's always a trail. There's a trail of how the transaction is first recorded, and there's a trail of how the transaction has subsequently been changed. Making text digital is mandatory. Um, Making text digital for VAT purposes was mandatory since 2016. And ever since then, there was a debate about having the digital record keeping for individual or for rental income. It was basically planned to be implemented in 2020, but because of COVID, it got delayed. And for other administrative purposes, they will keep on delaying it. But now, from 6th of April 26, it becomes mandatory for any individual whose business income, which is basically rental income, self-employment income, is exceeding £50,000. The limit, and that £50,000 is basically based on the last submitted tax return, which is 5th of April, 24-25 tax return. So if certain types of qualifying income is more than £50,000, then you become liable to start submitting information on quarterly basis and then making tax digital. If a person is already VAT registered, and then I'm afraid there will be two different tax returns for MTD purpose. One is MTD VAT and the other one is MTD itself. But most softwares actually are designed to actually extract necessary information for respective tax return. But yes, you will basically have to submit both individually. It's a quarterly system. So quarter actually are calendar quarters based on the tax return. So first quarter was 6th of April to 5th of July, and you've got 1 month to submit that return. Because it's the first year, HMRC basically announced that they're not charging any penalty at this stage, but there will be penalty regime in future. So you just basically make sure that you're ready. Now that limit of £50,000 is going down to £30,000 next year. So again, you basically be ready because more and more clients will be subject to this MTD regime. That £30,000 is basically again applies on qualifying income based on 25-26 tax returns. So the tax return which we are doing once we are basically able to do the tax return for this year, then we know which clients are actually falling into the MTD regime starting from next year. Now, partnerships are exempt from MTD at this stage. So if you are running a rental income business in a partnership format, then you are not subject to that MTD, making tax digital. But if you are an individual receiving rent, then yes, you are subject to MTD. Like I said, the only option HMRC, like for example, in tax return, they have opened up their own portal for you to do a tax return, or for the taxpayer to do a tax return. But in MTD case, now you have to basically rely on commercially available softwares. So common softwares are, for example, Xero, QuickBooks, Sage, Free Agent. Some certain banks are actually offering free softwares if you actually bank with them. So, for example, Barclays is offering software. Tide is offering. Starling Bank is offering. So yes, certain banks are offering softwares um, free of charge. Or it's not technically free, but because it's covered within the bank charges. But yes, they are offering. Um, Now, why they're doing MTD is a sort of long debate, but basically HMRC wanted two things. One is to get information as soon as possible from the taxpayer so that they can plan ahead, and also improve the record keeping. So as I mentioned previously, our transaction is coded as in real time as soon as it goes into the software. And that trail is something which HMRC is looking for, because in past, when they start a compliance investigation, client basically starts telling them that they don't have the records or they don't have the receipts or them kind of things. So at least I mean, even MTD, you're not required to actually have receipts digitally, but at least the transaction is coded digitally. So HMRC can see what you have claimed and what you have basically disclosed as an income. So that's basically the um, main fundamentals of MTD. Um, Now, common errors. As I mentioned, HMRC basically collect information from different sources. So those sources could be um, Department of Work and Pension basically is feeding in. It's basically sort of partially part of HMRC, but it's feeding information about taxpayers of how much they're paying in terms of benefits. So common example is child benefit. A person is subject to child benefit charge and it's not been disclosed. So HMRC get that information from Department of Work and Pension. And generally, after the submission date, they start basically comparing that information into the information they receive from third parties. And if there is any error, they normally trigger investigation. It all depends on errors. In certain cases, they have got powers to actually do a discovery assessment, basically, and amend the tax return, and then give you right of appeal. But normally, that's based on certain information. One thing which is common, probably it is more applicable to members of ICMA, is that foreign banks, typically foreign tax authorities, are sharing information with HMRC. And it's mainly to do with income arising outside UK. Typically, interest you receive on Pakistani bank or Indian banks, interest you receive on fixed deposits, for example, rental income, if you have declared that in for example, Pakistan, and the person is subject to UK residency, then that income should be declared here as well. Obviously, there is relief available of any taxes paid in a foreign country, but yes, that is typically information fed in to HMRC from outside sources. They do also compare their records, their own records. So a very common example is a person is employed by 3 or 4 different companies and just forgot to actually declare um, income from one employment or probably benefits from one employment. So, for example, if the employer is giving car or gym membership or health benefit, typically people just forgot to actually disclose that to their accountants or to taxmen. So again, HMRC collaborate that information from their own sources and then compare it to what has been declared. Um, Now, if they found an error, it all depends on the reason why it happened. It's the individual inspector who makes a assessment whether or not this is a deliberate attempt to defraud the tax system or it is a common error. Um, Typically, not paying um, child benefit charge is classified not officially. So these are not official statements from HMRC, but most inspectors classify child benefit charge as a error. But if you basically not disclosed, for example, dividends which are black and white in your bank account, then you could be classified as careless or in certain cases deliberate. Um, Again, the reason it's important is because um, these behaviors actually trigger the amount of penalties. So if is carelessness, probably inspectors will assess that it will trigger 10% penalty on top of the tax. But if you're deliberate, probably 50%, or if you are basically fraudulent in that kind of concealment, then they can charge up to 100% of the tax liability as a penalty. But just basically, as an accountant, we have got duty of care. So just basically make sure you have got enough information. You are satisfied yourself, actually, if you're working on behalf of the client, that you are not concealing anything. Like I said, errors do happen, and there are certain sort of common errors, but you just basically make sure that you've given reasonable care to the tax return, to the individual. Asking the right question is most important. For example, basically client gives you rental income receipt for all the expenses. So basically, you need to look into whether those receipts are actually of revenue nature or of capital nature. And that basically goes on to your judgment as a tax advisor. If the person is basically incurring, don't know, having a new windows done in the house, then that's mostly a capital nature, which will be claimed against the capital gain tax, not rental income. But if there's a sort of fixed session of repairs, a leak or something, then that's mainly the revenue nature. Again, in terms of self-employment income or capital, so corporation tax purposes, whether that expense is wholly and exclusively for the business. If there's a traveling, is there any reason why the person is traveling? So, for example, if the person has got nature of work where they need to travel around world, around Europe, then their airfares are basically business expenditure. But if the person's work is that they need to go into the office or go into the site, for example, if it's builder and a builder is paying airfares or parking on the airport or them kind of things, and then first reasonable explanation is why they are incurring those expenditure. Um, Needless to say, basically, that you need to make sure that any changes have to be incorporated while you are doing any kind of work. Um, Typically, I mean, it's not a taxation topic, but leases need to be classified differently in accounts. So basically, HMRC agreed that as long as the accounts are under UK GAAP, so they are reasonable for the tax purposes. So again, you need to make sure that your um, your UK GAAP is up to date, which is basically the basis of your accounts preparation, and which those accounts basically will be used for the purpose of um, taxation. Now, what is going to change? Thresholds. Income tax thresholds are frozen for a number of years, and they will be until 2028. There will be a new budget in October this year, which will basically define whether they are going to extend those limits frozen or they're going to change it, but it's mainly frozen. Late payment interest. If you have not paid the tax in time, then basically HMRC will charge, and in most cases it's automatic. So it's not the inspector who's deciding whether or not they'll charge you interest. It's basically triggered automatically. At the moment, the rate is 4% plus Bank of England base rate, which is 3.75. So any movement between Bank of England base rate will increase or decrease that interest. Employer national insurance, that has been increased since 6th of April 25 to 15%. Used to be 9%, 11%, 13%, and now it's 15%. As I mentioned earlier, self-employed individual or partners of a partnership, they are subject to Class 4 national insurance. Class 2 has been abolished. So they are subject to Class 4 national insurance as well as income tax, which is basically 20, 40, or 45%. They will be subject to Class 4 national insurance, which is based on the profits. So if there's no profit, there is no Class 4 national insurance, although in certain cases you are actually advised to actually pay something towards the national insurance, because that national insurance is linked to your state pension. So if you are actively working for certain number of years, then you're entitled for national state pension. So that is something you need to look into is it as well, that even if the business is basically making losses, you can actually pay voluntary basis Class 3 national insurance, which basically defines that this year as a working year, and then that goes towards your entitlement for the state pension. Now, capital gain tax. Capital gain tax is a tax which is an indirect tax basically, but it is based on some sort of crystallizing events um, on certain type of transactions, mainly of capital nature. So for example, if you sell your house, you are subject to capital gain tax. You sell your house in Pakistan, you sell your house in UK, is same thing. The only difference is if you're selling a property, a house mainly, not commercial property, residential house or residential dwelling in UK, then you have to basically report that gain and pay the tax within 60 days. So that's the additional requirement for you. Um, so you need to calculate that tax, pay the tax liability within 60 days. And when you actually do the tax return for next year, you need to basically re-report that liability gain and recalculate the liability because capital gain tax is based on your residual um, tax liability. So if you've got allowances left in basic rate band, then your tax liability is less. But if you are a higher rate taxpayer, then your liability is different. And basically, because you're paying capital gain tax now on the estimated income for this year, that's why it has to be recalculated when all the sources of information is available. So, say for example, if you are selling the property today, you have got until 3rd of October to calculate and pay the tax liability. That tax liability, the gain is actual, but the tax liability is estimated. And then when you do 26, 27 tax returns, you basically have to reincorporate that into your other sources of income. And then that will trigger whatever the liability is. Um, Business asset disposable relief used to be called entrepreneur relief. That has gone up from 10% to 14%, and it's basically going up again to 18%. Um, Capital allowances, that has changed to 14%. Now, if you're individual, you're not going to get first year allowance, but you're going to get annual investment allowance. Slightly different rule, but in most cases, it's the similar one. So you just basically make sure you're not claiming first year allowance and claim the investment allowance. Um, Most actually softwares do ensure that you're claiming the correct form of um, allowances, but just basically make sure that you tick the right boxes in HMRC portal or in the accounts or in the tax software or whatever. Uh, what is going to happen in next 2 years? MTD, which is a big theme for this year, triggered on income over £50,000. Not all income, but certain type of income has started in April 26. अगले साल that limit is going to go down to 30,000. आपके income tax thresholds जो हैं 12,570 and the basic rate band and the higher rate tax bracket that has been frozen to 2028. On the budget, they'll decide whether to keep that frozen for another couple of years or basically start giving it. The biggest jump was 2010 when the coalition government came in and it started increasing the personal allowances massively. But for last few years, I would say since COVID, it's been frozen. Um, and basically, that's another form of government not creating a headline of increasing taxation, but if there's inflation in the economy, then more and more people will be subject to income tax, or more people are going into higher rate taxation because of those frozen limits. So, for example, this government manifesto is that they're not going to increase any taxation, but they can freeze the limits and that basically give them some sort of tax leverage, but that's the debate. A couple of items I thought I'll probably share with you, which is that which basically practically helps you. Um, Salary and dividend, quite common. Typically, we basically structure income extraction from private limited company, which is a family-owned company. Let's say if it's a single director, husband, wife, who are shareholder. Now they sometimes extract the income in form of dividends, but in certain cases, dividends might not be the most efficient. So there's employer allowance of 10,500 pounds, so which basically set off their employer national insurance contribution. So it could be that instead of taking dividends, they can start taking salary. So rental income is taxed at 25%. There's no tapering. Again, this is something you need to basically look into, that is it worth to actually give them dividends, or is it better to give them salary? Because salaries are taxed at 20%, rental income may be taxed at 25%. There may be element of national insurance, but then there's allowances available. So this is something you need to carefully look at each individual client. Payment on account, that's another important one. Um, you need to make sure that if the income has dropped, then you can apply to tax HMRC via Form 303, SA 303, to reduce the payment on account. If so, basically that gives cash flow advantage to the taxpayer. But just remember that if your estimation is wrong, HMRC will automatically charge you interest, charge taxpayer the interest. So basically, need to make sure. My sort of general suggestion is that um, let client pay first payment on account as it is, and then do a tax return before 31st of July, before the second installment is due, and then let them pay the accurate figure based on. But in certain cases that might not be possible. I take that on board. Um, but yes, this is something you need to look. Um, Review whether the client is subject to making tax digital. Um, Earlier review is much more practical and much more better because it's a learning curve for clients. Remember, those clients are actually smaller clients who don't have any help. So it's not like a corporate body which with a turnover of 10 million and have 3 or 4 people working in their finance department. Most of these people actually are doing the work and creating the books as well. So an earlier suggestion of MTD would be much more better. You can do a pilot run. You don't have to submit that information to HMRC. You can still do a pilot program, um, gather all the information. Um, it takes a while, in my personal experience, it will take a while for clients to be ready because those clients actually bring the information once a year. Now they have to do it uh, within few days of the quarter ending. So again, that's a learning curve. So if you start early, just make sure that the client actually learned themselves of how to submit the information and how to bring the information to you. I'll take the questions later on, but I thought I'll probably tell you about some practical aspects of the tax return. So give me a second. Let me just open up. Um, So I basically extracted information from dummy HMRC tax return. And I thought probably it's much easier, much better for you to actually understand how to do the tax return. So this is HMRC's portal, not a commercially available portal. Every commercial portals normally have their own learning videos. Most of them actually have got sort of YouTube videos or their own manuals. So it's much easier for you to understand. But for people who are not doing the tax return through commercial software and using HMRC portal, I thought probably it's easier um, to just run through and show you how step-by-step guidance. Now, in terms of accessing the records, you need to make sure that you have got the registration done in time. Normally, you set up your portal, a client's portal, or your own agent portal, and it will take some time for you to get necessary authorizations, so as soon as possible. Once you register, they will basically ask. So if you're registering as a client, or if the client is registering, they need to basically verify their own IDs. Most systems are linked to either passport or driving license, where they can actually verify the information. And as soon as the information is verified, um, your registration will go through. If a taxpayer is using HMRC app, then there's an option of using biometric information for verification. And that's much easier, much better and quicker. So again, something you need to look into whether or not this is something which will be of any use to you. No, assuming everything is done, once you log into the portal, you will be able to actually access self-employment records. Self-employment records basically show what has happened in previous years. So, for example, if you are taking over a client from somebody else's and they have done their own tax returns for last couple of years, you will be able to see those tax returns. You will be able to see how much was payment on account. Again, that's an important factor for you to for your own calculation purposes, because you can knock off the liability if it's not a first year, basically. And you can actually see if there's any sort of overdue payment for previous years. Again, if you're advising client to pay this year's tax liability, it's probably easier to let them know that there's an outstanding sort of bill of X amount, so that they don't keep on incurring the charges. So let's start with the tax return. Now, going back to the topic of why you need to do a tax return, there are certain occasions: employment income of certain value, mainly £100,000, triggers are tax return. You've got self-employment income, you've got partnership income, you've got interest, dividends, foreign income. You've got capital gain tax, although it's been reported or earlier under real-time information basis, but within 60 days. But still it has to go into the tax return. You're getting child benefit payments. So again, at certain income, which is £60,000 this year, it has to be paid back. There's a new thing this year, which is if the person is of pension age, and if that person is getting winter payment allowance, which is £200, and if their pension income is more than £30,000, then they will have to pay that £200 back. Again, this has to be through the tax system. Certain type of care.
Malik sir, can you please enhance the size of the screen a little bit, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Uh, full screen. How do I get view
If
it in
you
full?
look at your right hand side, I think there's this on the right hand side plus sign. Can you just zoom in a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, much better. Thank you.
Okay. अच्छा तो टैक्स रिटर्न किसके लिए जरूरी है एम्प्लॉयमेंट इनकम self employment income certain type of benefits income which has already been reported but still needs to be reported again to recalibrate the tax liability foreign income um, typical example is foreign banks which are paying interest make sure that has been disclosed because there are a lot of investigation based on that fact. um, Child benefit again is one of them. Um, Something happened in this tax year, which is that there were different rules. अगर आपके पास rental income है, there were different rules if that income is furnished holiday letting or just a simple letting of a dwelling. Now, वो जो furnished holiday letting, because furnished holiday letting was classified as a business, so there are certain expenses which are allowed for that furnished holiday letting. That's not there anymore, right? So basically, if you're doing furnished holiday letting, just make sure that you adopt to the new rules. टैक्स रिटर्न्स में से जो फॉरनेस्ट हॉलिडे लेटिंग के बॉक्सेस हैं वो रिमूव कर दिए हैं HMRC ने. Non-domicile rule, again, this is something happened last year. And mainly it applies to people coming into UK. लोगों के पास 4 years, 4 साल है to adopt the new rules. So in first 4 years, they can bring certain type of capital without paying any tax. They can adopt to certain types of special rules in terms of foreign income. जो कि अप्लाई होता है उनसे, but this is something you need to look into it. There are disclosures on owner managed businesses. So previously, if you are getting salary income and dividends from your own business, which is a corporate business, a company आपने बनाई हुई है, you just basically simply disclose salary and rental income. Now, HMRC wants some more information from you as part of the tax return. So mainly they need to know कि आपका company number क्या है, because that will अगर similar name हो businesses के, तो it takes them a while to figure out कि कौन सी company के which we are talking about, but they can extract that as long as they've got the company number. आपसे वो आप शेयर होल्डर इंफॉर्मेशन पूछते हैं, especially if you're declaring dividends. And the logic behind is that if there's 50-50 shareholding, so they can actually track down who's got remaining 50% shareholding, and just make sure that basically HMRC make sure that the full amount of dividend has been disclosed. Winter fuel payment, again, they make our life miserable in terms of bringing in more and more things. So last year, government announced that they are withdrawing winter fuel. And so winter fuel, basically, you can search it, but broadly speaking, is allowances available to certain pensionable age individuals जिनको support मिलती है if the weather is below certain temperature for a number of days. So typically December में I think if I don't remember correctly 4-5 दिन के लिए अगर below freezing point temperature चला जाता है तो people get 200 pound. That 200 pound wasn't mean tested. Government tried to remove it. There was sort of backfire politically. और उसके बाद उन्होंने इंट्रोड्यूस कर दिया कि they will still give that 200 pound to everybody, but now it becomes means tested. So if a person has got income of 35,000 pound, then that person basically have to give it back. So it's not like writing a check to tax authorities. It has to obviously go into the tax system. And then accountants need to make sure that has been disclosed as well. Right. So let's go into the actual tax return. So we start with the tax return. शुरू के कुछ बॉक्सेस जो होंगे वो आपको प्री पॉपुलेटेड इंफॉर्मेशन मिलेगी बेस्ड ऑन के जो इंफॉर्मेशन HMRC के पास है टिपिकली हाउस एड्रेस HMRC के पास जब आपने रजिस्ट्रेशन करवाई थी अपने UTR नंबर लेने के लिए तो आपने पोस्ट एड्रेस दिया था नाउ दैट एड्रेस माइट नॉट बी एक्यूरेट क्योंकि हो सकता है आपने लास्ट ईयर बताया हो एंड सिंस देन द क्लाइंट हैज मूव्ड सो दिस इज अपॉर्चुनिटी कि आप उस एड्रेस को चेंज करवा लें UTR number obviously remains the same but in some odd occasions हो सकता है आपका नाम उन्होंने HMRC ने सही तरह ना लिखा हुआ हो या आपका नेशनल इंश्योरेंस नहीं सही हो सो दिस इज समथिंग आप उसको कर सकते हैं चेक करवा सकते अपडेट कर सकते हैं residency is important because within UK जो 4 countries हैं उनके different rules हैं certain type of taxes are payable to the state or certain type of taxes are payable to the local government. So again, you make sure कि अगर एक बंदा स्कॉटलैंड में ग्लासगो में बेस्ड है तो that person will be paying Glasgow taxes, Scottish taxes rather than English taxes. Income tax basically same है but there's some additional taxes जो कि impose हुए हैं local government की तरफ से Welsh farming का different type of structure है taxes का marital status again is important if you are going to claim transfer of spouses allowances you don't have to disclose but yes अगर आप उसको करते हैं again certain other allowances are available blind person को additional मिल जाता है आपको जो है allowance personal allowance as long as they are registered blind. So again, this is something you need to make sure कि आप disclose करो ताकि you should text or you get all the allowances accurately. Student loan. जब मैं आपको बता रहा था ना कि there are certain type of organization which are sharing information. Student loan is one of them. Student loans जो है वो if you are aware if you get university loan or some certain type of education loans that is payable as long as you are earning above certain amount. Typically जो एक common error होता है you fail to disclose कि you have got student loan or अगर आप if you fail to disclose then obviously it's not triggering a tax liability as part of the tax system. Again, student loan company inform all the details to HMRC after the year is finished. Again, HMRC compare that information and it could be triggering a discovery assessment. Normally, for these kind of things, they don't actually start a full investigation. It's called discovery assessment. Basically, they just amend the tax return, give you 30 days to either accept or reject proposal. And if you are rejecting, then obviously you need to give them a reason. So for example, अगर student loan है, HMRC ने डिस्कवरी असेसमेंट किया कि then you'll be paying let's say 9%, but आपने एक privately lump sum payment कर दी है, so just after the triggering date, so वो HMRC information नहीं मिलेगी because cut off point was 5th of October, let's say हमने 5th of April, let's say taxpayer ने 6th of April को full payment कर दिया. So that basically triggers unnecessary discovery assessment. You can just actually make a appeal, but 9 out of 10 times discovery assessments are based on the facts um, rather than assessment. Right. So let's start with the actual tax return. आपने information gather कर ली for the tax return purposes. You know कि आपके क्लाइंट के पास कौन से सोर्सेज ऑफ इनकम है. टिपिकली आपने सेल्फ एम्प्लॉयमेंट इनकम है उसके पास, लेट्स से पार्टनरशिप इनकम है, पार्टनरशिप इनकम से आपने पार्टनर्स का शेयर रिटायरमेंट कर लिया, आपने अकाउंट प्रोड्यूस कर दिया. Don't have to be sort of in a typical format, but something which you can work on. एक Excel spreadsheet बना ली, आपने सब चीज़ें summarize कर दी. That's where you have got all the information. Now, basically, you can then start doing the tax return. It's worth mentioning if there's a distinction between a hobby and a business. Now, previously, HMRC had a vague definition of hobby. So tax is only payable if you're running a business. So if you are, for example, so I've got a client basically who does refurb cars as a hobby, classic cars. So वो typically एक barn find car लेता है, spend 6 months, 1 year in restoring that, और उसको sell कर देता है. But he does it as a hobby. ठीक है. That hobby is not taxed because it's kind of a layer. लेकिन एक मोटर मैकेनिक है, that is something he's doing, he or she is doing for living. And if you're doing as a profession or a trade, तो वो taxable है. But if you're just trying to do something as a hobby, तो वो taxable नहीं है. Similarly, you started a business, or you don't know where this business is going. As an example, आपने एक Amazon या eBay पे online selling platform बना लिया. It may be doing something, it may not do something. So as long as the turnover, not the profit, turnover is less than £1,000, HMRC don't want you to do a tax return or don't want you to disclose even, because for them it's not worth it. अगर £1,000 पे लेट्स अस्यूम के आपके एक्सपेंसेस के बाद प्रॉफिट हो गया £500 और आप 20% टैक्स ब्रैकेट में हो, इट्स गोइंग टू बेसिकली £100 टैक्स हो गया आपका. HMRC view is that £100 is not material enough for them to keep a record for you. ठीक है. और इस वजह से if there's a element called trading allowance, which is £1,000, or trading allowance can be increased if you can demonstrate that you're doing as a hobby. Now we are in the HMRC portal. आपने define करना है कि tax कौन कौन से taxes applicable हो रहे हैं आप पे. Just click on the right boxes और उससे ट्रिगर हो जाएगा आपका, वो पेजेस ओपन हो जाएंगे जो कि आपने फर्दर इंफॉर्मेशन फिल करनी है. That £1,000 is also applicable on rental income, by the way. So if your rental income is less than £1,000, so typically एक accidental landlord है, um, you're away from the property 2 महीने के लिए आपने, rather than keeping the property vacant, आपने किसी से negotiate कर लिया कि they pay £500 to you per month, 2 महीने के लिए आपने property उसको let out कर दी. You are just accidental landlord. Your gross income is less than £1,000. So HMRC is not interested. Um, Certain type of incomes, foreign incomes are subject to tax. Certain types are not subject to tax. Capital gain tax, again, if there is a capital gain tax which has already been reported within 60 days, you still need to bring it in the next return. So first few जो आपके links होंगे which will help you, ये जो आपको typically screen के right side पे नजर आ रहा है, that basically defines कि आपके tax return किस तरह आपने tailor करनी है. Interest £2,000, £500 UK taxation as interest है. Dividends again £500 allowances हैं. Again, if it's less than that amount, HMRC is not interested. कि आपको कितना मिला है. But अगर आपको £1,000 मिला है, तो you still get that £500 allowance. We'll come on to उसके उसको calculate करते हुए. लेकिन yes, you need to basically trigger pages for those ones. Pension again, आपको है. Winter fuel, this is a new thing as I mentioned. Uh, um, you need to look at individual's age. It only applies to pensionable age, which is 66 years at the moment. अगर individual is of that age, typically आपके client होंगे जो कि rental income receive कर रही हैं as well as pension income, then winter fuel allowance trigger होगा. Most commercial softwares actually trigger that. अगर आपकी पेंशन एज और आपने कोई फिगर्स नहीं ऐड की, तो टिपिकली जिस तरह आपको चाइल्ड बेनिफिट दे ट्रिगर वार्निंग के दिस पर्सन हैज गॉट इनकम ऑफ सर्टेन एज, सॉरी सर्टेन अमाउंट, but those boxes are vacant. It doesn't stop you from filing, but it triggers a message. और इसी तरह विंटर फ्यूल का software से could trigger कि this person has got income of more than £35,000 and that person is of pensionable age, so have a word with the client. Certain benefits are exempt, certain benefits are taxable. Again, this is something you need to look on case-to-case basis. Losses, taxable losses can be brought forward or they can be adjusted. Similarly, terminal losses, and again, same rules apply. You can go back 3 years. अगर आपने पेंशन कंट्रीब्यूशन की है क्लाइंट ने, अगर उसने चैरिटी पेमेंट स्कीम है, then their basic rate band increase करेगा. Obviously that you need to feed in that information. Charity means registered charities only, so it's not like कि अगर आपने एक स्ट्रीट कलेक्टर को दे दिए हैं, बिकॉज यू कांट वेरीफाई कि उसकी चैरिटी नंबर क्या है, सो यू कांट क्लेम दैट. बट अगर आपने फॉर एग्जांपल एक मॉस्क में दिया है, मॉस्क इज रजिस्टर्ड चैरिटी या और डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ चैरिटीज हैं, तो वो आप उसको क्लेम कर सकते हो. Marriage allowance, again, this is something applies to individuals जो they born before the state. Marriage allowance transferable. Again, there's no age restriction. अगर एक spouse है let's say he or she is earning less than 12,500 months, so they can actually transfer some of those allowances to the husband or wife, the other half. It has to be registered marriage. Live-in relationship doesn't count in it. Um, and there is a claim mechanism. So the person who's transferring that has to make a claim, और आपने फिर अपनी टैक्स रिटर्न में क्लेम करना है. सिमिलरली अगर आपने ट्रांसफर आपके क्लाइंट ने ट्रांसफर करने हैं अपना 10% टू देयर स्पाउस, तो अगेन इन द टैक्स रिटर्न दे कैन हैव टू, जो ट्रांसफर कर रहा है उसके लिए कंपलसरी नहीं है कि वो टैक्स रिटर्न बना रहा हो. They can use different mechanism. They can go to HMRC portal website और वहाँ से अपना ट्रांसफर कर दें. All they need is husbands or wives जिसको ट्रांसफर करना है उसके नेशनल इंश्योरेंस नंबर, डेट ऑफ बर्थ और फुल नेम. लेकिन अगर दे आर इन द सेल्फ असेसमेंट टैक्स सिस्टम, देन टैक्स रिटर्न में भी आपको इंफॉर्मेशन फीड करनी पड़ेगी. राइट. Again, you need to look into different types of relief. Seed investment allowance आपके available होता है for certain type of investors, which reduces the tax liability. Again, this is an opportunity कि आप वो disclose करो. Tax avoidance schemes. अगर आपने किसी भी किस्म की tax avoidance scheme यूज की है, HMRC wants you to disclose that नंबर. हर टैक्स अवॉइडेंस स्कीम जब होती है बनती है, तो seller of that scheme has to get registered with the taxman. I don't know people who are following UK tax system recently. A company थी Property 118 which is doing transfer of properties to limited company. उनका केस था. तो आई मीन एवरी जो कंपनी होगी जो कि टैक्स स्कीम इंट्रोड्यूस करा रही है उसको रजिस्ट्रेशन कंपलसरी है, और आपको टैक्स पेयर जो है जो अपनी सेल्फ असेसमेंट में वो नंबर डिस्क्लोज करेगा, सो दैट इफ देयर इज एनीथिंग हैपन इन फ्यूचर तो HMRC नोज के कौन कौन से इंडिविजुअल्स ने वो टैक्स स्कीम यूज़ की है ताकि वो उनको पिन पॉइंट कर सकें. Um, there's a difference between tax advisor and if you are basically doing the tax return on behalf of somebody else. Typically आपके family members जो हैं taxpayer के, वो help कर सकते हैं. They can do the tax return for their and they don't have to be regulated accountants, but generally tax advisors need to be regulated by different institutes. HMRC is not allowing tax advisors to be unregistered. For money laundering purposes, they regulate. या तो आपका अपना इंस्टीट्यूट रेगुलेट करेगा, या फिर HMRC खुद रेगुलेट करेगा टैक्स एडवाइजर्स को. Right. So let's jump on to self-employment. आपकी इनकम है मोर देन £90,000. £90,000 इसलिए कि बिलो £90,000 आपको समरी इंफॉर्मेशन फीड इन कर अलाउ है फीड इन करना टैक्स रिटर्न में. एंड इफ यू आर मोर देन £90,000 तो आपको सर्टेन डिटेल इंफॉर्मेशन प्रोवाइड करनी पड़ती है. एंड दैट £90,000 इज नॉट प्रॉफिट, इज द ग्रॉस टर्नओवर. आपके अकाउंट्स रेडी हो गए हैं, आपके पास सारी इंफॉर्मेशन है. All you need to do is basically fill in all the boxes. आपके पास certain type of income जो है वो specially treated होती है, foster care, but otherwise most self-employment are same. So whether trading or profession is the same. So आपको अपनी tax returns जो है वो fill करनी है. Up until couple of years ago आप अपना अपना ईयर खुद से डिफाइन करते थे, एंड बेसिकली दैट गोज इनटू के आपने बिजनेस स्टार्ट कब किया था, बट 2 years ago HMRC ने डिफाइन कर दिया कि दैट ईयर हैज टू बी द टैक्स ईयर विच इज 5th of April टू, सॉरी 6th of April टू फॉलोइंग 5th of April। सो वो ही उसी बेसिस में HMRC को इन्फॉर्मेशन चाहिए। अगर आपने फॉर एग्जांपल अभी बिजनेस स्टार्ट किया है एंड इट्स ओनली 1 month, so that's fine. They need 1 month information. You don't have to wait for month 13 to actually start feeding information. HMRC को भी सारी information चाहिए उस 1 month की, and you can't choose कि 31st of January है आपका year end या 31st December है, it has to be 5th of April. Now HMRC announced कि वो they are relaxed between 5th of April and 31st of March, but that's about it. Um, Business is carried abroad, basically certain other reliefs and purposes, but I won't go into these details. But yes, you need to look into if something is applicable to you. Um, so that person, an example person, उसका प्रोफेशन के बारे में बताओगे, उसका बिजनेस नेम के बारे में बताएंगे आप लोग। um, और बिजनेस कब स्टार्ट हुआ था ये भी बताना है आपको। अगर बिजनेस सीज कर दिया है तो वो भी बताना है, एंड दिस इज समथिंग जो कि HMRC इस साल न्यू स्टार्ट किया है इन्होंने बॉक्सेस, और वो MTD के लिए लिंकअप करने के लिए उनको, बिकॉज इफ़ यू आर सीजिंग द बिजनेस तो वो जो MTD एक्सपेक्टेशन है उनके पास जो लिस्ट प्रोवाइड कर रही हैं MTD के लिए, वहाँ से वो रिमूव कर सकें। तो दिस इज समथिंग न्यू बॉक्स एंड दिस अ मैंडेटरी बॉक्स। Um, Again, just feed in the information based on your tax return, or sorry, based on your accounts. If the business is less than 90,000 pound, you can just basically add a single value of the whole expenses. Otherwise, a breakdown provide karoge. Um, and then this, whether it's a commercial software or whether it's HMRC portal, they'll calculate the profit for you. आपके पास allowances available होंगे, आपके पास option available होगा कि brought forward losses को utilize करो, annual investment allowance पे capital allowance की extended branch है, you need to calculate and then feed in the information. Otherwise, आपको capital allowances तो वैसे ही available होंगे अगर it is a fixed expenditure. And yeah, so basically based on that, the system will calculate your net profit, give you an option of setting off any losses, और आपको टैक्सेबल एलिमेंट आ जाएगा। अगर आप कंस्ट्रक्शन सेक्टर में हैं देन, और आपका टैक्स डिडक्ट हुआ है अंडर CIS स्कीम, तो दिस इज एन अपॉर्चुनिटी कि आप उसको क्लेम बैक करोगे एंड इट बी सेट ऑफ अगेंस्ट द लायबिलिटी, और आपको अगर रिफंड है तो रिफंड मिलेगा, अदरवाइज यू जस्ट पे द डिफरेंस। नेशनल इंश्योरेंस कंट्रीब्यूशन अगेन, बिकॉज नेशनल इंश्योरेंस के रूल्स जो हैं वो डिफरेंट हैं, you just basically have to make sure कि you tick the right boxes. Again, certain commercial जो softwares हैं, based on date of birth, they can automatically trigger that, but HMRC portal में आपको बताना पड़ता है। So we have got self-employment income here, ठीक है। I was telling you about कि class 2 national insurance जो है abolish हो गया है, but you can voluntarily make a payment. जो इस साल की लिमिट है वो 6845 है। इफ योर इनकम इज मोर देन 6845, तो यू पे क्लास 4 नेशनल इंश्योरेंस, एंड देन दैट ईयर इज काउंटेड एज अ वर्किंग ईयर फॉर पेंशन कैलकुलेशन और स्टेट बेनिफिट। लेकिन अगर उससे कम है तो देयर इज एन अपॉर्चुनिटी कि आप वॉलंटरी बेसिस पे पे कर दो। दिस सिस्टम विल कैलकुलेट कि कितनी वॉलंटरी पेमेंट करनी होगी, देयर इज अ मिनिमम लिमिट, so that you keep on the system. Um, right, so system ने कैलकुलेट कर लिया आपका नेशनल इंश्योरेंस कंट्रीब्यूशन कितना होगा। Let's say the same taxpayer has got rental income, रेंट रूम रिलीफ अवेलेबल है उसके, अगर उसने अपने ही घर में विद सर्टेन कंडीशंस एक रूम लेट आउट किया हुआ है, देन इट्स नॉट सब्जेक्ट टू टैक्स। आपने डिफाइन बताना है, इनकम जॉइंटली है विद स्पाउस और इंडिविजुअली है। अगेन दिस इज अ न्यू बॉक्स तो क्रिएटेड, अगर आपने इनकम सीज कर दी है रिसीव करना, बिकॉज आपके वो जो एमटीडी सिस्टम से डीलिंग कर दें आपको। Again, it's pretty straightforward. All you need to do is just enter the information के इनकम कितनी थी, एक्सपेंडिचर कितना है। अगेन वर्थ नोटिंग के expenditure you need to carefully analyze whether it's a capital expenditure or it's a revenue expenditure. Capital expenditure can't be claimed at this stage. It will be subject to capital gain taxes, but revenue expenditure यहाँ पे claim करोगे। Um, again, pretty straightforward. All you need to do is just get the information. Um, एक और चीज़ कुछ क्लाइंट्स को इस साल स्टार्ट हो रही है, वे चीज़ कि अगर इलेक्ट्रिक चार्जर रेंटल प्रॉपर्टी पे इंस्टॉल करवाया है, then they can claim allowances against that one, which is 100% first year allowances only on the element of charging point. If you've been working for number of years, आपको सेपरेटली डिस्क्लोज नहीं करना पड़ता था रिप्लेसमेंट कॉस्ट को, इफ यू आर लेटिंग आउट अ प्रॉपर्टी अंडर फर्निश्ड कंडीशंस। लेकिन फ्यू इयर्स अगो दे रिमूव दैट, बिकॉज आपको 10% एक्स्ट्रा अलाउंस मिलता था, बट यू कांट क्लेम एक्सपेंसेस। नाउ इट्स बेसिकली बेस्ड ऑन द एक्चुअल स्पेंड। तो आपको जो भी रिप्लेसमेंट है, सो फॉर एग्जांपल आपने वाइट गुड्स के साथ लेट आउट किया हुआ है घर, और फ्रिज लेट से नीड्स रिप्लेसिंग, तो वो जो फ्रिज की कॉस्ट रिप्लेसमेंट कॉस्ट है वो आपको क्लेमेबल है, बट इट हैज़ टू बी डिस्क्लोज सेपरेटली। Again, pretty standard. System will calculate the tax liability for, sorry, income for you. अगर आपका फॉरेन इनकम है, अगेन दिस इज समथिंग आपको डिस्क्लोज करना पड़ेगा इन द राइट बॉक्सेस। फॉरेन इनकम के लिए मस्ट है कि कंट्री का कोड आपको होना चाहिए, ताकि HMRC जब फर्दर इंफॉर्मेशन कंपेयर कर रहा होगा तो वो उसके साथ होगा। डिविडेंड्स, वेदर UK डिविडेंड्स और फॉरेन डिविडेंड्स हैव टू बी डिस्क्लोज्ड। The only exception is कि अगर 500 से कम डिविडेंड्स हैं UK डिविडेंड्स, you don't have to disclose, but 500 ज़्यादा हैं तो। Interest income, typically, some taxpayers, especially migrants, they keep some money in the foreign countries, Pakistan, India, Nigeria, them kind of countries. तो वहाँ से जो, because they become a tax resident in this country, so if they're getting income, and if even if they're not remitting that income, they still have to disclose that income here and pay tax on it. आपको foreign tax credit मिल जाता है against your liability, so just make sure कि आपको पता होना चाहिए कि आपका foreign tax deducted कितना हुआ है, withholding tax, so typically Pakistani banks take you आपके इनकम से टैक्स ऑलरेडी डिडक्ट कर लेते हैं। सो दिस इज समथिंग आपको पता होना चाहिए। Again, pretty much straightforward. Sorry, I'm just conscious of the time, so just running past quickly. Again, any kind of income, foreign dividends, foreign interest, blah, 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 everything has to be disclosed. Capital gain tax, even if you disclosed within 60 days, that has to be brought in now. That's pretty straightforward, because अगर आपने 60 days के अंदर disclose किया है, then you already got the accounts capital gain के, तो आपने वो just information feed in करनी है system में, and then system will basically tell you कि आपने कितनी tax liability है, कितने profit है, और उस प्रॉफिट पे कितना टैक्स आपने पे किया हुआ है वो भी बताना है आपको। Cryptocurrencies, again, not very common, but yes, it's part of capital gain tax unless you are running as a business, so then becomes a business tax. Shares, स्पेशल रूल्स अप्लाई, लेकिन आपको वो भी कैपिटल गेन टैक्स का पार्ट है. Listed, whether it's listed shares or unlisted shares, it's more or less the same, but disclosure purposes के लिए HMRC wants you to separate listed and unlisted shares. Any capital losses brought forward जो आपने उस टाइम पे क्लेम नहीं किए थे 60 days, within 60 days. और बाय द वे, कैपिटल गेन टैक्स आपने जो डिस्क्लोज किया था वो 60 days सिर्फ अप्लाई होता है रेजिडेंशियल प्रॉपर्टी पे. लेट्स से कमर्शियल प्रॉपर्टी है, लेट्स से फॉरेन प्रॉपर्टी है, सो दिस इज द अपॉर्चुनिटी कि आप डिस्क्लोज करो उस चीज़ को. द ओनली थिंग यू डिस्क्लोज्ड विदिन 60 days इज रेजिडेंशियल यूके प्रॉपर्टी. बिजनेस एसेट डिस्पोजेबल रिलीफ आपको अगेन ट्रिगर करेगी यहाँ पर. You can interest, I mean, these are pretty much straightforward boxes. So you just basically disclose as based on the information you're holding. Reliefs, district pension scheme में आपने payment scheme ही है. Charitable payments हैं, again, this is something you basically disclose here ताकि आपको relief मिल जाए आपकी उसकी. Any underpaid tax जो PAY कोडिंग में HMRC ने आपको लेटर वगैरह लिखा होगा, अगर वो है तो just disclose it here. Um, uh, Right, so at the end basically आपकी जो कैलकुलेशंस हैं वो आपका सिस्टम करके देगा, whether HMRC का अपना सिस्टम या सॉफ्टवेयर, थर्ड पार्टी सॉफ्टवेयर. इट बेसिकली कैलकुलेट्स कि आपकी इनकम कितनी थी फ्रॉम डिफरेंट सोर्सेज, आपके पर्सनल अलाउंसेस. नॉट एवरीबॉडी इज सब्जेक्ट टू 12,570, यू नीड टू लुक इनटू इट. और आपकी जो टैक्स calculations हैं, I always advise this thing कि इस tax calculations को एक दफ़ा देख लो. There are occasions when even renowned softwares are not doing it properly. So just make sure कि ये figures जो हैं वो सही calculate हुई हुई हों. And then basically it's just calculate the tax liability for you, or tax liability payable on this and this date, और आपका जो पेमेंट ऑन अकाउंट है वो भी कैलकुलेट करोगा. दे जो गॉट अपॉर्चुनिटी कि आप अगर आपने कुछ पेमेंट ऑन अकाउंट डिले करना है, रिड्यूस करना है एज पार्ट ऑफ द टैक्स रिटर्न, यू कैन ऑलवेज डू इट लेटर ऑन थ्रू अ सेपरेट फॉर्म, बट यस आपके टैक्स रिटर्न में एक अपॉर्चुनिटी आपको मिलेगी. And it just basically keep a copy and them kind of things. So I think I've covered everything, which is basically of general nature. I'll take some questions if time permits. So, Kazi Sab, have you got time or you can?
We have noticed, actually we have recorded all the questions, हमने सारे नोट डाउन कर लिए हैं. तो वो फिर आपके एडवाइस पे जो भी उनके एक प्रॉपर आंसर्स होंगे वो हम मेंबर्स को शेयर कर देंगे.
Okay, ठीक है, सही है.
I think that would be much better, because it's about the time. Now we welcome Qazi Ghulam Mustafa Sahab, Chairman, TSPD Committee and immediate past President. Sir, thank you very much for sparing much of your valuable time for this session. और मैं देख रहा था कि right from the beginning you were actually watching this session. So thank you very much for your participation. Now, any remarks, any comments from yourself, please?
Thank you very much, Qadi Sahab. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad. Distinguished keynote speaker, Asim Malik Sahab, Director, Technical Support, Hafiz Qazi Sahab and his team, Secretariat and IT team who have facilitated this webinar, distinguished members, students, fellow professionals, ladies and gentlemen. As we conclude today's webinar on UK tax return, a practical guide to self-assessment and HMRC compliance, I would like to extend my heartfelt appreciation to our distinguished keynote speaker, Mr. Asim Malik, for his excellent presentation. He has shared valuable technical knowledge and practical insight on UK tax return filing and HMRC compliance. With increasing globalization and growing opportunities for Pakistani accounting professionals to serve international clients, the topic is both timely and highly relevant. And this was the demand from the practicing members. Inshallah, we will soon be arranging such seminars on taxation of US and other countries so that our practicing members may expand their horizon of services. I also thank all of our members, students, and participants who joined today's session. And I'm really happy to see that over 200 participants joined and they showed their greater interest by asking the questions, which will be replied as committed by Qazi Sahab. Your enthusiasm for learning and continuous professional development reflects the strength of our profession. Knowledge grows when it is shared. And today's interactive session is a testament to that spirit. My sincere appreciation goes to the Director of Technical Support, Qazi Sahab, and his dedicated team for organizing this successful webinar. Their commitment to arranging high-quality technical events throughout the year is highly commendable. Ladies and gentlemen, the accounting profession is changing faster than ever before. Artificial intelligence, generative AI, and now agentic AI, digital analytics, blockchain, ERP system, automation, data-driven decision-making are transforming to the way accountants work and the value they create for businesses. Recognizing this transformation, ICMA Pakistan has taken proactive steps to prepare our members for future. As you know that in 2025, we introduced a forward-looking curriculum that incorporates generative AI, digital analytics, blockchain, ERP, and more technologies. Our objective is not to merely produce qualified accountants, but to develop professionals who are digitally competent, strategically minded, and globally competitive. As Chairman of Technical Support and Practice Development Committee, I am pleased to share that our committee has been working diligently to strengthen the professional capabilities of our practicing members. Our focus is to provide practical support that helps members enhance their technical competence, improve service quality, and expand their professional practices. To achieve these objectives, we have undertaken several important initiatives, and I'll be sharing some of them here. We have been organizing specialized training programs in taxation, auditing, information technology, artificial intelligence, etc., to equip our practicing accountants with the latest knowledge and practical skills which are required to be a good practicing accountant. We have contributed to the development of cost accounting standards. As you know that we have developed 23 cost accounting standards, and we are the second body after India who have done this work. We have also developed cost accounting framework for cost audit framework to strengthen professional practices and support regulatory compliance for our practicing members. We also developed the audit programs, technical guidance to promote consistency and quality audit engagements. Further, the committee has actively supported practicing firms through legislative advocacy, technical guidance, and business development initiatives that help members respond effectively to changing market needs. These initiatives demonstrate our commitment to ensuring that ICMA Pakistan's members remain relevant, competent, and competitive in an increasingly dynamic business environment. One of the important milestones has been to introduce unique document identification number UDIN for our practicing firms. UDIN is a unique alphanumeric code generated for documents certified by the practicing members, especially the audits, enabling stakeholders to verify their authenticity and significantly reducing risk of forged or fraudulent certifications. This initiative enhances the credibility of our members' professional work. It promotes transparency and trust and aligns ICMI Pakistan with international best practices in professional assurance and governance. Another significant initiative of the Technical Support and Practice Development Committee has been the development of Quality Control Review Program for practicing firms. The program was designed to promote a culture of quality, consistency, and continuous improvement in the professional practice. And building upon this foundation, ICMA Pakistan has established a quality control board, which is now actively undertaking the quality review and rating of the practicing firms. The board's role extends beyond assessment. It also focuses on capacity building of the firms by identifying areas of improvement, providing constructive guidance, and encouraging the adoption of best professional practices. Through this initiative, we aim to enhance the quality of professional services, strengthen the public confidence in our members, and enable our practicing firms to meet both national and international standards of excellence. Friends, the future of our profession belongs to those who embrace change, invest in continuous learning, and adapt to the new technologies. Technical knowledge remains essential, but it must now be complemented by digital skills, innovation, analytical thinking, communication, and ethical leadership. ICMA Pakistan remains committed to serving the stakeholders, which include our students, members, practicing firms, their teams, regulators, and the wider business community, which ICMA is committed to serve. Through quality education, technical excellence, professional development, and thought leadership, we will continue to create opportunities for our members to excel both in Pakistan and internationally. I encourage every member to take full advantage of the learning opportunities provided by the Institute. Every webinar, every training, every workshop, and every professional interaction is an investment in your future and in the future of our profession. As you have seen, that this webinar was free, and most of our webinars are free. We don't charge for it. The only cost of this event and the most of the events is your precious time, which I think you should spend. Before I conclude, I once again extend my sincere gratitude to Asim Malik Sahab for sharing his expertise so generously. I also thank the director TSPD for their excellent support and in organizing today's event. Finally, I thank all participants for your time, engagement, and commitment to the professional excellence. Together, let us continue to strengthen our profession through knowledge, innovation, collaboration, and integrity. Once again, thank you very much. Pakistan Zindabad and Allah Hafiz.
Thank you so very much for your kind words and enlightening all the members about what Institute is doing for the practicing members and supporting the students who want to jump into the practice as well. On these notes, Asim Malik Sahab, thank you so very much for your time, valuable time. Chairman TSPD Committee, Ghulam Qazi Sahab, fellow member of the Institute. Fahad Siddiqui Saab, Shafiq Saab for all your support. So inshallah, we'll be bringing some more of these kind of sessions over the period of time. Stay tuned with us.